Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I Was an Outcast Liege. Chapter 90, Veteran General. Heavy rain splashed on the water puddles. Xiao Qiye's horse had already dashed its way to the palace entrance. Red silk umbrellas emerged one after the other from the small sedans, all of them sheltering important ministers of third rank and above. The Minister of War, Chen Zhen, made a special point of being a little late to wait for Xiao Qiye at the foot of the vermilion steps leading up to the palace hall. When he saw Xiao Qiye coming forth in the rain, he said, "Xian, listen to me. There is no army in this world that is invincible. A defeat is a teacher that will guide one towards another victory. Jiming has been fighting with the Bianchis Hanshi tribe for years. He's also human." Chen Zhen, who had some friendly relations with Xiao Fangxiu, spoke abruptly without preamble. Yet, Xiao Qiye understood what he meant. Xiao Qiye nodded at him with an expressionless face. He ascended the stairs together with Chen Zhen and proceeded to wait outside Mingli Hall to be summoned in. The rain soaked his shoulders, and it was in this way he stood there, shunning even the faintest of light from the lanterns. The umbrella at the back suddenly shifted to shield Xiao Qiye. Shenzhequan held up the umbrella and stood side by side with him. Standing next to each other with both of their red robes drenched by the rain made them look like demonic fiends of the rainy night. About a moment later, Fu Man lifted the curtain and paid his obeisances to the group of court officials outside and called out to summon them in. Hai Lianji went in first, followed by the various ministers from the Grand Secretariat. Then it was Xiao Qiye's turn. Even Shenzhequan himself could not follow him in. Xiao Qiye did not move. He remained fixed in position for a spell and looked at Shenzhequan. There were too many sublime emotions contained in this gaze. In this very instant, he turned from a valiant and vicious hound into a lone wolf that had strayed from the pack. Shenzhequan wanted to caress Xiao Qiye's cheeks, but he could not do so at this moment. They stood still for a long time under the shadows of this forbidden palace's walls, wearing shackles invisible to the eyes. Xiao Jiming was severely wounded, and there were no other valiant general within the borders of Liege. This was an indication that after tonight, the Chu capital must appoint a new general to Liege to take over the mantle from Xiao Jiming. However, this person would not be Xiao Qiye. Qi Ziyuan's remarks a year earlier turned out to be prophetic. She warned Xiao Jiming that the Liege armored cavalry needed a new general. Owing to the excessive concentration of military power, the Liege armored cavalry could only take after the surname Xiao. Once the banner of the Xiao clan fell, the constitution of the Liege armored cavalry would be greatly undermined, making it hard to sustain their glory. The heir of Xiao Shisui was merely 6 years of age. If Xiao Jiming was out of the picture, then the Liege armored cavalry's only successor was Xiao Qiye, who was in Chu capital. However, Chu capital would never release him, not unless the princess consort of Xiao Shisui, Liege, entered the capital with their son, Xiao Suan, to replace Xiao Qiye as hostages in this power struggle. In acting willfully, Xiao Qiye had been merely counting on his powerful connections, much like a fox exploiting the tiger's might. But at this moment, he once again plunged into a ravine where he could not act on his own volition. The thought of going home roared madly in his heart, but all he could do was to gaze like this at Shenzhequan. Other than Shenzhequan, no one else would understand. "Your lordship." Fu Man urged him on in a whisper. Xiao Qiye moved his feet and entered the hall. The Ministry of Revenue assigned officials over for an inspection before the military provisions were escorted via the northeast supply route. Since there was a problem, why didn't the Ministry of Revenue report it? Sen Yu was the first to take issue with it. He did not even have time to write the memorial and simply stepped forth to interrogate Wei Huigo outright. When the express relay report arrived at Chu capital, it was delayed for an entire 2 hours. If we issue the recall order now, we have to brave the rain to speed all the way there on a route that isn't easy to navigate. By the time it arrives at Liege, it would have already been 4 days later. Wei Huigo, Are you trying to get people killed? Wei Huigu said nothing. He was just like a statue that night as he kneeled on the ground in a daze without even disputing a word. The moment Xiao Qiye entered, the hall fell silent. The veteran ministers either hung their heads low or held their foreheads. The sound of the rain outside was noisy, but the suffocating heat inside was even worse. "See Ian." Liege Unhung made as if to speak when he saw him, but then he hesitated. Eventually, he merely said, "Take a seat." Xiao Qiye did not sit. He bowed and said, "This humble subject has only just dismounted and does not know the details. What happened in Liege? What the hell? Such a major matter happened and nobody told the Marquis." Liege Unhung flung the memorial. "Wei Huigu, you tell him yourself." Wei Huigu lowered his head and said without looking at Xiao Qiye, "Something went wrong with the military provisions that were transported to Liege last month." According to the relay report of Yang Cheng, the Assistant Administration Commissioner of Juexi Provincial Administration Commission, these military provisions have been mixed with moldy substances. It was distributed after arriving at Liege, and subsequently, thousands of people fell ill the night before. With that, who would still dare to look at Xiao Qiye in the eye? The Xiao clan fought wars at the frontier. In addition, they had performed a tremendous meritorious service 5 years ago in coming to the emperor's rescue. The Hanshi tribe was the toughest Biancha tribe to battle against, and the entire northeast area was guarded and defended by Xiao Jiming alone. They imprisoned the Xiao clan's youngest son in Chu capital, and yet they let his battle-scarred eldest brother, who fought hard with his sweat and blood, eat moldy and rotten grains. So, how could they still dare to look Xiao Qiye in the eyes at this time? Without turning a hair, Xiao Qiye said, "The military provisions were prepared by the Provincial Administration Commission of Juexi." Yang Chen knew there was a problem. Why did he wait until the military provisions arrived at Liege before he dared to mention it? He's the Assistant Administration Commissioner of the Southwest, and he has no grudge or enmity with Liege. Why would he risk his head to do something like this? The officials from the Ministry of Revenue triple-checked the military provisions, and the official reports that were sent back all stated that they were new grains from last year. But now, they have all become old and moldy grains. They are all minor officials of low grade. Why would they do that? The military provisions arrived at Liege via the northeast supply route, and the Liege armored cavalry steward supervising the granary also had to do an inspection before distributing them. The multiple layers of arrangements involved for such a large batch of moldy goods to make its way into the mouths of the officers and soldiers at the frontier pass this easily can only be described as methodical. The more he spoke, the more his words increased in gravity. The Liege armored cavalry has guarded the pass for 30 years, and the troops deserve punishment for their defeat. However, this subject will only say one thing to everyone present here. A minor defeat of Liege is a loss for our Xiao clan, but a major defeat of Liege is a crisis for Great Zhou. For several years, the Hanshi tribe has been pacing back and forth around the Hanjian Eastern Mountain Range. What they are waiting for is an opportunity. Once the troops of Zongbo were defeated, the Hanshi tribe would deploy their horses to launch an assault. They would bring the cavalry of the rest of the 11 tribes and fought their way right outside the gates of Chu capital without any letting up. It has just been a mere 5 years, and the page has already been turned on the tragic massacre of the 6 prefectures of Zongbo. We have yet to avenge our national humiliation, and we are going to allow our own people to add another strike to it. The moment Xiao Qiye said his piece, the color drained from the faces of everyone present. His words were blunt. He had come here tonight to raise hell and take someone to task for this matter. Someone played dirty tricks on the military provisions, and they want to dismiss him with that same old trick of bureaucracy. No way. He would go all out on a killing spree, and he would pursue this case relentlessly. Everything else be damned, he wasn't going to play nice with any of them. The military provisions were tampered with. The new grains were substituted with moldy ones. It's no doubt inextricably connected to those at the bottom of the supply chain who resell the grains at a profit. A few years earlier, Zhongbo was in short supply of grains, and many merchants who stockpiled the grains made a killing from this. It's just that I never expected there to be officials and merchants still in collusion with one another to do such unconscionable deeds in spite of strictly enforced laws in place nowadays. The Minister of Justice, Qiang Jin, said, "If we can't carry out a thorough investigation of this matter, then we will not be able to give the various generals of Liege an explanation. This humble subject requests a joint trial by the 3 judicial offices with the Jinyi Wei to launch a search and investigation from Bama province to Chu capital. We must get to the bottom of this matter. Not only that. There's another matter that needs to be urgently attended to." The Minister of War, Chen Zhen, cast a glance at Xiao Qiye and said, "The military provisions for Qidong 5 commanderies similarly comes from Bama province. We must dispatch an urgent report immediately to Commander-in-Chief Qi. This batch of grains should not be distributed further down the line. How are we going to make up for the shortage?" Xiao Qiye's tone was icy. "These 2 batches of military provisions are the entire hoard amassed last year from the 3 great granaries of Juexi. Now that you are recalling them and rendering them useless, how is the military provisions shortage going to be filled? And from where are you going to supplement them? If the shortage cannot be filled within 5 days, Liege and Qidong will have to fight wars on empty stomachs. It's a question of feeding hundreds of thousands of people. Borrow and transfer from Hubei province, He province, and Hse province. The receipts for the loans shall be borne by the imperial court. This matter is critical. The state treasury can't take out that much money at such short notice to buy supply. We can only promise to exempt these 3 prefectures from taxes for approximately 2 years." Hai Lianji said in a steady and unhurried voice. "It's only with all the grains from the 13 cities that Bama province was able to afford these 2 batches of military provisions. The 3 prefectures the Grand Secretary mentioned cannot be compared to it. Besides, these 3 prefectures are separated and far away from one another. Preparing and coordinating the grains to be escorted and transported will also take up several days. Tell Qi Ziyan that Qidong's military provision is reduced by half this year. They still have military fields to sustain them, so they still have extra resources. He province leads straight to Qidong, while the grains from Hse province and Hubei province have to be transferred tonight." Although Hai Lianji was still sick, he was still clear-headed in his arrangements. Xiao Shisui is wounded. It's inadvisable for him to remain for long at the front line. And the Prince of Liege is ill and is similarly indisposed to head out for war. Chen Zhen, draw up a list of name of commanding generals and hand it to me in an hour. Within 3 days, Chu capital must send a capable officer to Liege to take over its military affairs." Hai Lianji took charge of the situation and gave the final word. There was no doubt that Wei Huigo would not get away this time. Xiao Qiye did not intend to let him off. He did not directly go straight for him at this juncture only because the redeployment of the commanding general was a far more important issue at present. Wei Huigo was behaving a little oddly tonight. He kneeled where he was, never once explaining to vindicate himself even after a long time had passed. *******. Mingli Hall's side room was brightly illuminated, and the officials who had withdrawn from the court session all gathered here. Hai Lianji could not bear cold winter nights, so Kong Qiu draped an overcoat over him. He gathered the coat around him and gestured with his hand to motion for everyone to take a seat. "I will send the impeachment memorial to the Grand Secretariat tomorrow," Sen Yu said. "Just how many incidents have the Wei clan had been caught up in? His Majesty is mindful of showing mercy, so Wei Huixing's incident the last time did not implicate Wei Huigo, and he wouldn't admit his fault for what happened with the public ditches back then. And what about the military provisions this time? He can't escape blame for negligence and dereliction of duty. Being an official in the imperial court has nothing to do with one's familial background and standing. When it comes to attending to official duties for the sovereign, Don't keep using a person's surname to find faults with others. If he makes a mistake, then impeach him if you must. Liege had yet to drink a drop of water tonight. He looked at Xiao Qiye and said, Xiao Shisui has been leading the troops for several years. Since he was able to kill his way out of the heavy siege and return to Liege, his life is not in any danger. There is no need for your lordship to be anxious. If there is anything in shortage in Liege, Chu capital will work through the night to allocate and transfer it. Xiao Qiye had already understood what Liege meant. To maintain the status quo, Liege would not let Xiao Qiye return to Liege, there's no question about it. Xiao Jiming was defeated but he was not dead, and even if Xiao Jiming died, Xiao Qiye still could not return home, because there was still Xiao Fangxiu. There are countless decent generals in Chu capital but those who can adapt to Liege are few and far between. The Hanjian Eastern Mountain Range is close to the desert, and we are about to head into the great heat period in the 6th month. The frontier is brutally hot. I'm afraid it'll be unsuitable if we dispatch an officer who was born in the southwest. Xiao Qiye sat on the chair, facing an entire room of veteran ministers, yet he was extremely calm. He reacted quickly, to the point that he could be described as unassailable. He preemptively examined the case of the military provisions and told Liege that it was fine to deploy a new general to Liege but it had to be someone who came from Liege or Qidong. He did not want an armchair strategist who was all talk and no action. Liege nodded approvingly at Xiao Qiye. At this point in time, one should indeed not be swayed by personal feelings and act impulsively for private gains and power. It was an indisputable fact that Liege lacked a commander to lead the troops. A deputy general who was skilled in warfare like Zhao Hui was formidable, too, but they were all men whom Xiao Fangxiu personally taught. They were originally meant to take on the tasks to coordinate and assist. It was fine for them to lead a troop of soldiers to outflank the enemies, but it was not enough to convince the masses if they were to lead Liege. But ever since the reign of Emperor Xiand, Great Zhou had been suffering from scarcity of capable generals. Of the 4 great generals, other than Zoqian Kaiu, the rest all had their own important duties to attend to. The abundance of talents further down the line were all high-ranking military officers from Qidong. They were all core members of the warfare squad whom Qizuyan single-handedly trained from scratch. It was Qidong's military affairs that they were familiar with. To lend out any of them to Liege was easier said than done. Besides, the Qi clan was about to enter a marriage alliance with the Hua clan. If a Qidong's general were to manage Liege's military affairs temporarily, then this would break the status quo again, resulting in one clan rising in dominance and making it hard to hold them in check. Who should be assigned? Even Liege's head hurt to think about it. As they burned with anxiety inside, Fu Man, who was stationed outside, suddenly hurried in and said, "Your Excellencies, look who's here." Xiao Qiye turned his head aside and suddenly rose to his feet. The entire hall of people followed suit and stood up, too. Liege stepped forward to greet and welcome the person personally. The man who took off his overcoat revealed his white hair, greeted Liege, and then looked at Xiao Qiye. This humble one raced through the night to hurry over to Chu capital to seek an audience with His Majesty for no other reason than the current matter of Liege. There was a lump in Xiao Qiye's throat as he said, "Shifu." However, Zoqian Kaiu did not speak with him. Instead, he said to Liege with a smile, "It has been many years since I last saw the Grand Secretary. I hope you are still in good health." Liege heavily gripped Zoqian Kaiu's wrists and said, "As old as Commander Zhou may be, can you still serve the country?" Zoqian Kaiu let out a long sigh and answered, "Although I am not how I once was back in the prime of my life with this aged face and grey hair, I still have the strength to draw a bow and shoot. There's no need for the Grand Secretary to worry. My purpose for coming here this time is for one, to temporarily stand in for Jiming to manage Liege's military affairs, and two, to deliver a message from Xiao Fangxiu." The entire room of people listened with rapt attention. Zoqian Kaiu looked at Xiao Qiye with a deep, profound gaze and said resolutely, "The might of the Prince of Liege has reverberated like a tiger's roar through Hanjian mountains for more than 10 years. His son has been defeated, and as his father, he wants to personally reclaim victory from Amu heir of the Hanshi tribe." ******. The rain thundered, and the gerfalcon let out a long cry as it circled among the dark clouds of Chu capital. 10 millions of li away, the military flag of Liege flapped in the wind. Amongst the thick and heavy ink-colored rain, Xiao Fangxiu, who had not stepped into the battlefield for decades, put on his armor and hung up his blade to lead the troops out to battle. The wind swept up Xiao Fangxiu's cape, and he took off his incongruous bamboo hat. "Amu heir." Xiao Fangxiu's voice was deep. He raised his arm in the rain to let out the raptors of Liege and laughed aloud into the wind. "Liege has drawn a demarcation line in the east, so what are you people trespassing over for? I've told you decades ago that Hanjian Mountain is the territory of my Liege armored cavalry." His voice reverberated through the rain. The armored cavalry behind him, cloaked under black armors, drew out their blades in unison. Their thick, oppressive might was like a creeping behemoth opening its eyes in the rainy night. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I Was an Outcast Liege. Chapter 91, Liege. Qiang came just in time, leaving no chance for Chu capital to send out a new general. Thunder sinking the Jade Stage was known far and wide for his military achievements. He was the great general after Silver Spear of Snow Pass, Fen Yishan, and he was also Xiao Jiming, Qi Zuyan, and Lu Guangbai's senior. It had been many years since he left the Tianfei watchtower. He had no private troops. Moreover, he was also a child from a humble background at Ji Wufen, who was adopted by the Jin Yiwei's commander-in-chief during the reign of Emperor Yanji. He had no family background to get in the way. His willingness to come out of obscurity to lead the troops was something Hai Lianji could not ask for more. As Qiang waited for Liege Unhung to summon him, he stood with Xiao Qiye under the eaves to watch the rain. "This entire journey has been a rush, so I didn't bring any message for you." Half of Qiang's overcoat was wet, all because he had never stopped to rest during the entire journey except to change horses. He slowed his tone and said, "Jiming has already returned to the camp, and a military medic has been arranged to take care of him. Don't worry." But Qiang omitted the extent of Xiao Jiming's injuries. Xiao Qiye partially lowered his head, then asked after a moment of silence, "What about his injuries?" Qiang gazed out into the rainy night and said, "There are some words that you and I can only say while standing here. Jiming's food had been tampered with. Even Zhao Hui fell for the trap. The squad of soldiers dragged their sick bodies to the battlefield and just happened to encounter Amu heir, who is the toughest of the lot to battle with. Jiming received 3 slashes. It was Zhao Hui who tumbled off his horse and carried him on his back while leading the 10 or more remaining soldiers to break out of the siege." Xiao Qiye clenched his fists. There was darkness in Qiang's eyes as he spoke solemnly. "Jiming has fought battles in the past while bogged down with ill health. He fought for so many years. He may seem to be fine on the surface, but in truth, he's already plagued by old ailments. This time, he could be said to have hurt his constitution. Using this opportunity to let him rest for half a year will permit him to recuperate and build up his strength again." That might be the case, but Qiang had taught the 2 brothers, and he could not be any clearer about their temperaments. Xiao Jiming was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. He did not inherit Xiao Fangxiu's extraordinarily strong and healthy physique, nor had he inherited Xiao Fangxiu's uncompromising and brutal approach. Whatever he lacked, Xiao Qiye had it all. Perhaps someone else might be jealous, but Xiao Jiming truly loved his family. He had the princess consort of Liege's compassion and benevolence ingrained in his nature, so he had never harbored the thought nor the intent to trample upon his younger brother. He saw himself as a sanctuary for them and did all he could to heal his wounds by himself. All these years, he never uttered a cry of pain. Lu Guangbai repeatedly said before that he was just but a man. At the same time as he retained his human desires, he still forced himself to become the sentinel of Liege. Still, it was Xiao Jiming's half a lifetime of honor and glory that was destroyed by this military defeat. Xiao Qiye never abhorred his cage any stronger than he did before at this time. As he struggled against his shackles, his wounds hurt the more he ground against them that they had already turned bloody. His gaze followed the raindrops and landed upon the ground, where the water puddle bore the weight of his silent agony. He braced himself and calmly said, "The meals in the military are all prepared by our own in-house errand runners. De Gur consumes the same food as the common soldiers. Harming him means harming thousands of men in the camp. We cannot drop this matter. I want them to pay with their lives. All those in charge of the meals have already been executed." Zhou Qiankai looked at Xiao Qiye. It was Jiming's idea. Liege had to bear such a grave grievance, yet they still reported it as military provisions adulterated with mold instead of premeditated murder attempt. Xiao Jiming broke out of the siege with sustained wounds. He hung on until the moment before he fell into a coma to give the order to execute those errand runners, all to prevent others from investigating under the charge of conspiracy to murder. A deliberate attempt to murder suggested a power struggle. Lifting the veil away would only muddy the situation. It was all too easy for Liege to be used by someone as a weapon. With Xiao Jiming's retreat, the appointment for a general for Liege's troops would fall into the Chu capital's hands. Who could guarantee that the person who added in the poison was the real murderer? It was not unheard of to kill by proxy. Besides, assuming the moldy grains and poisoning were just the first steps, then if they reported the attempted murder case and the imperial court could not find the perpetrator, the noble clans could distort the facts in their denunciations and falsely incriminate the Xiao family for stooping to deception by using Xiao Jiming's injuries and defeat to get Xiao Qiye back. You did well, too. You didn't tell them that you want to return to Liege to rally the forces and attempt a comeback. Zhou Qiankai revealed a despondent expression. If you had spoken frankly and fought for Liege's military power before the emperor, then their guilt tonight would have become a premeditated scheme. It would also put His Majesty on the alert and set the stage for future troubles. I expect that the Grand Secretary will not let me go. Xiao Qiye forced himself to pull himself together. It's as Shifu says. Fighting for military power will only make His Majesty afraid, and I still have the 20,000 men in the Imperial Army under my command. This is a big taboo. What's more, stirring up troubles and making unreasonable demands at this juncture will hold up Liege's military affairs. Shifu coming here has helped me out of a dire predicament. When I have my audience with His Majesty later, I'll discuss the dispatch issue of the military provisions with the Ministry of Revenue and Grand Secretary in detail. I'll have to get on my horse and head back at dawn tomorrow morning at the very latest. Your father has waged war with Amuir at the eastern mountain range. He's launching a frontal assault first. No matter what, we have to knock their momentum down. This was not the appropriate place to talk about this after all, and Zhou Qiankai stopped after discussing a little about the military situation. He merely said, "It has been a long time since I last led the troops. I'll have to familiarize myself with the military affairs as soon as I can on my return to the camp. Liege is different from Tianfei Watchtower. Liege armored cavalry is skilled in storming the enemy, while I used to be on the defensive back at Tianfei Watchtower. I have to discuss this properly with your father. And one more thing, Zhao Hui is also seriously injured this time. He only has a younger sister in Chu capital who had married into another family. Remember to get Chen Yang to go over the Ministry of Rights later to let them know that all is well." Xiao Qiye nodded his head in acknowledgement. Just then, Fu Man came to invite Zhou Qiankai inside. Zhou Qiankai took one last look at Xiao Qiye and said, "You're on your own in Chu capital. Take good care of yourself." Xiao Qiye performed the disciples' bow to him, and Zhou Qiankai strode forward and lifted the curtain to enter. Fei Sheng got his wish these days to handle matters at Zhang Qingshan's side. Something had gone wrong with Juexi's military provisions tonight, and Jiang Qingshan, who still held the post of Provincial Administration Commissioner of Juexi, had to make a trip to Mingli Hall to discuss the matter and would not be out for at least a couple hours. Fei Sheng's old ailment acted up again. Wanting to rest for a moment in the office, he sent a junior eunuch to get him some food. Fei Sheng was sitting on the chair with one leg propped over the other to wait when he suddenly heard a sound from the door. He took a look with the help from the candle light. Seeing that it was Han Chang, he hurriedly got up to pay his respects. Han Chang, who had just arrived after braving the rain, motioned for him to rise. Fei Sheng went up to remove the overcoat from Han Chang. Han Chang asked, "Has His Majesty summoned them to ask about it?" Fei Sheng knew he was asking about something else, so he replied in a deferential manner, "Commander Zhou is here." "Zhou Qianqiu." Han Chang was taken aback and blanked out for a moment. He lives up to his name as the Prince of Liege, with reactions so swift that others are not given the opportunity to exploit any openings. With Commander Zhou's appearance, there will be no other candidate in Chu capital who can surpass him. This Liege armored cavalry is still the armored cavalry of Liege. Fei Sheng concurred but did not continue the topic. He knew that these were not matters he could get himself involved in, so he would stay as far away as he could. Han Chang knew what he was thinking and held him in contempt for that. Those illegitimate sons born of concubines were all like this. They had no guts and no determination. They eyed the bit of carrot dangling before them all day long, but made no attempt to forge ahead. However, while this was how Han Chang thought, he still guided Fei Sheng with an amiable countenance. Although this matter is somehow linked to Jiang Qingshan, it is still not a job he handled himself after all. The higher-ups won't blame him for this. Following him is indeed a good path that will open up opportunities for you. He is heading for Zhongbo next month. In the future, when the Jin Yue head there for field work, they will all have to rely on you to pave the way for them. Xiao Sheng, work hard and do your best. Fei Sheng hurriedly responded in the affirmative and saw Han Chang out. As he lowered his head to lift the hem of Han Chang's robe for him, he suddenly saw the corner of the robe stained with some grayish-black dirt. He instantly patted it away quickly for Han Chang and fawned on him, saying, "Did your excellency come over on foot?" "How?" Han Chang unexpectedly yanked over the corner of his robe. Fei Sheng's voice promptly came to a halt. Outside, the heavy rain poured and the play of shadow and light from the candle sunk Fei Sheng's face into the darkness. In that very instant, the place fell so silent that one could hear a pin drop. But in just a blink of an eye, Fei Sheng raised his head and squeezed out a smile as if nothing had happened. With a very submissive tone, he said, "The smudge of mud has already been wiped off. Your Excellency, please be careful on your way out." Han Chang stared at him and slowly released his grip on the corner of his robe. He smiled together with him and said after a moment had passed, "You may go about your business." The moment Han Chang had left, Fei Sheng's face turned cold. He lifted his hand and looked carefully at the residue of dirty mud on his fingertips under the candle light. There was wood ash mixed within, and the rainwater had turned it into such a sludge that the color was hard to make out, but the bit of red mud mixed up with it did not escape his eyes. The Shi residence had been burned down, and the dye the Shi clan had used happened to be imported red clay. This thing was valuable and hard to get. Even a prince's residence was not capable of getting this item as the Shi clan. Other than the Shi clan, there were no other clans in Chu capital who use it. What was Han Chang doing at the Shi's residence at this time? Fei Sheng wiped away the mud on his fingertip. The cold sweat on his back had broken out earlier when his eyes had met Han Chang's. He stood under the light with his thoughts in disarray. There was one thing he was sure of. Han Chang's intent to kill him had already been ignited in that one exchange of gaze. ******. The next day, Zhou Qianqiu returned to Liege on horseback. Xiao Qiya accompanied Hai Lianji to send him out of the city. He could not return home, but he could deploy Chen Yang and Gu Jin out to follow the grains distribution officials to Hubei province and Hse province to supervise the military provisions. Nothing must go wrong with the military provisions this time. Xiao Qiye could not trust the men from the 6 ministries. He had long planted Wang Xian in Hse province. Then he had gotten Pan Lin to transfer Liang Qiushan to Hubei province. This way, he would not miss a single detail of the overall planning for Libei's military provisions. When Liang Qiushan returns, Xiao Qiye, who had not slept for the entire night, wiped his face with a cold handkerchief and said, "I'll have to convey to him my proper thanks." Shen Zequin sat in the carriage. He had not slept last night either, having stood guard over the hall. Upon hearing him, he said, "I have already made arrangements to settle his family down in the residence. Someone will be on night patrol to watch over them, just so he can do his job with peace of mind." Hubei province differs from Hse province. It has no dealings with us, and now we are getting them to prepare the military provisions at such a brief notice. Hubei province prefectural prefect must be feeling rather reluctant. Hubei province is exempted from handing over military provisions for 8 years. The reason Liege considered them is that they can afford to do so. Covering himself with the handkerchief, Xiao Qiye leaned back against the carriage wall and continued after a moment's pause, "We have to arrest Wei Guo today. We can't let him land in the hands of the Ministry of Justice. They had amicable relations with the Minister of Justice, Kong Chiu, and they had a good time drinking wine together the last time, too. But this bit of friendship could not be compared to Liege. Xiao Qiye had already given up the idea of beating around the bush with them. He wanted to sever Wei Guo's retreat route, so he could only make this case bypass the joint trial by the 3 judicial offices and have it end up in the hands of the Jinyi Wei, with Shen Zequin. Wei Guo, Shen Zequin fiddled with the authority token that had been set aside on the small table. He thought for a moment with a solemn expression, then said, since he had already intercepted the express relay report, it means that he does not want the report to make its way to the emperor. Yet, he changed his mind at the last minute. There must be a reason for it. Xiao Qiye recalled Wei Guo in Mingli Hall last night and said, he was indeed acting strange last night. Going by his temperament, he should be trying every means possible to pass the blame or pick a scapegoat from the Ministry of Revenue to take the blame. But not only did he not try to wrangle his way out, he even answered when asked. Shen Zequin's fingertips stopped with a thud. He said, it's true that Bama province had an excess harvest last year. Now that the military provisions have been adulterated with substandard grains, then where did such a big batch of grain go? Xiao Qiye pulled off the handkerchief. Clutching it in his hands, he said, it's having designs on wealth that causes loss of lives. If these grains were to set out from Bama province via He province's waterways, then it would be able to bypass Chu capital to lead directly to Zongbo, where they can brand it under a merchant's label and sell it out at a high price as grains for the common folks. There were already rumors before the new year that Zhang Qingshan was going to Zongbo to assume the position of Provincial Administration Commissioner. If someone were to make much of this matter, then it's clear what's going on. Shen Zequin raised his eyes to exchange gazes with Xiao Qiye. Someone in the Provincial Administration Commission of Juexi has been colluding with the wealthy merchants to resell the military grains at a profit. Because Zhang Qingshan was there in the past to oversee the entire operation and to strictly check the provisions, they carried it out on a small scale. But this year, Zhang Qingshan was going to be transferred out of Juexi, and he entered the capital after the new year to report for duty. He had to undergo the judicial process of vetting and waiting for a review trial, so he had no way to supervise Juexi's preparation and coordination of the military provisions, and this gave the other party an opening to exploit. It's just that no one expected them to be so bold as to dare to use moldy grains as substitutes. Those who can take this much grains are few and far between. The expression in Xiao Qiye's eyes was deep and unfathomable. Without their own caravan of traveling merchants to conduct the transaction, No one would dare to touch it. Shi Hongxian, Shen Zequin said slowly. Shi Hongxian. Xiao Qiye said with certainty. He died not because of you and me but because he had already become a sacrificial pawn who could implicate others. Wei Huigo tried every means to make Shi Hongxian take the blame in the collapse case. Was it because both of them were already dealing in private to resell military provisions for profit, and Wei Huigo was worried that Shi Hongxian would be subjected to rigorous checks? That was why he wanted him dead. Shen Zequin contemplated it over for a moment, then said, "That's right." Shi Hongxian had indeed said before that Wei Huigo did it for the money. The fact that he agreed back then to give Wei Huigo money so quickly shows that he knew Wei Huigo's character very well and thought that Wei Huigo would do this. If that was the case, Shi Hongxian is already dead. Wei Huigo had no need to take such a big risk to continue doing this. I suspect this wasn't done by Wei Huigo this time. Someone got an evidence against him because of the earlier deals. That was why he knew he had already been treated as a tool when he saw the relay report. There was no escape for him now. Given how he did not argue back to vindicate himself, it's very likely that he knew who the other party is. He's trying to imitate Hua Saiqian at this moment by using his life to prevent the Wei clan from suffering further losses. Listening to the sound of rain in this interval of political intrigue against one another, Xiao Qiye felt a tinge of exhaustion washed over him. Xiao Jiming did right. Libei's timely execution of the mess cooks was precisely to prevent themselves from being used as a pawn and becoming a stepping stone for the others to eradicate dissidents. No. Maybe not just a stepping stone. They indeed wanted to use this military defeat to reduce Libei's military power. They wanted to break up the Liege armored cavalry, which had always been in the hands of the Xiao clan, and hand it over to Chu capital to control and command. This way, even if they could not take down Liege immediately, they could still create the effect of supervision by an army inspecting censor, thereby restraining and holding the Xiao clan in check. If Commander Zhou had not arrived in time tonight, Shen Zequin held Xiao Qiye's hand and looked at him in this cramped carriage. Then the appointment of the new general by Chu capital would have been issued this morning, and the Liege armored cavalry would no longer be the Liege armored cavalry. Xiao Qiye's hand was icy cold. It took him a long while before he lifted his hand to stroke Shen Zequin's hair. He said in a hoarse voice, "Liege armored cavalry is the armored cavalry of Great Zhou. Father personally established it with his own hands. It's far more important than my eldest brother and me. For so many years, Chu capital doesn't understand that we serve as an impenetrable fortress in Liege. We are not treasonous traitors." End chapter.